it's time to go back to Mars. 5. Oh. In this video we're talking about the latest addition to the Elegoo lineup, the entry-level Mars 5 Ultra, a printer that's frankly so good that if you're in the market for a new printer, this one should be right at the top of your list. I interrupt this video to say that while I was getting to the end of the edit, Elegoo reached out to me to confirm the pricing for the Mars 5 Ultra. $269. And if you don't think that's worth it, then I have no idea what you're smoking. Watch the rest of the review to see if you think it's worth it, but spoiler alert, it definitely is. But this printer isn't perfect, and so we're going to talk about that too. Hi, I'm James, and welcome to Rising 8 Minis. So yeah, this is the new Elegoo Mars 5 Ultra, and yes, it has the new tilting VAT. And we're going to talk about whether that's a good thing or a bad thing later on, but for now there are a lot of features on this printer, and so let's just start with the basics. Nice lid. Love the colourway. The printer dimensions are 260 by 268 by 451.5 millimeters. But you're going to want to leave some space above the printer so you can remove the lid. I'm kind of disappointed by this, to be honest with you. I'm so used to flippy up lids. Hey, again, it's not a deal breaker, but I just wish it was a flippy up lid. They're so much cooler. If we spin this thing around to the side, we can have a look at the I/O. USB, power switch, DC input, Wi-Fi module. I wish this was on the back, I wish this was on the front, and I wish this was on the front. It's just a silly little first world problem, but meh. There it is. Now, I'm not the most techie sort of person, but I'm sure Wi-Fi modules are able to be built in. Why isn't this built in? Like its bigger brother the Saturn, the Mars now has a vertical touchscreen, which I was expecting not to like, but I actually really do. It's nice and responsive, and although a little bit difficult to type in the Wi-Fi password the first time around, you really only need to do this once, and after that, you're golden. Now that the lid is off, I think the most obvious thing to talk about is the new build plate. We have what Elegoo are calling auto leveling, but was actually auto zeroing here. And the screws and ball joints from the previous generations are gone, replaced with a nice metal catch. That's a great addition and it makes it so much easier to work with. The plate I'm less convinced about because not only can you not submerge it because it's hollow and full of springs for the auto zeroing, but the bottom also has all these columns which make cleaning a right pain in the arse. That said, the plate itself is etched, which is awesome. Sat below the plate is a metal vat with 2 pouring spouts, although I do wish these spouts had corners so they actually poured. These ones do function really nicely, and they're certainly better than some of the other vats that are out there with no pouring spouts at all, so thanks Elegoo. The vat sits above a 9K, which is actually 8520 by 4320 mono LCD screen, and all this stacks up to give you a build area of 78 by 153 by 165 millimeters. The last thing inside the lid is a camera, which sits in the corner and has some claimed AI features like empty plate detection or live monitoring and time-lapse creation. I haven't had any chance to use the empty plate detection, but I have used the time-lapse creation to great effect. Although, it would have been really nice to have a light in here too, because as soon as it goes dark, obviously the camera doesn't work. So that's a whole lot of features in the box, and I'm going to go through the more important ones in more detail in the next half of the video. But if you've enjoyed this summary, I've got lots more videos like this on the channel and lots more coming up in the future, so make sure you subscribe for that. So the initial impressions of this printer is it's really good. It's solidly made, and it's packed full of features. But the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So let's print some stuff. The printing experience of this machine is much like any other. It does come bundled with Chitubox Pro, so that's what I'll be using here. A little word of advice though. If you're going to install software, make sure you install the software that comes pre-bundled with the device on the USB stick. I could have saved myself a lot of heartache if I'd done that, and I wouldn't have had to make an embarrassing, panicked phone call to Fohammer.
Hi mate, you alright?
Who very kindly pointed out that I'm an idiot.
So there you go. We live and we learn. Let's move on.
Once you do have the correct piece of software installed, it actually works like a charm. And included in these latest updates is Chitubox Manager, which you get to by clicking on the globe icon at the top of the screen, and that gives you access to the wireless features on the printer. From here you can send all your files directly to your machine, and also download any time-lapse features you want to do, as well as checking into your printing live. It's a seamless experience and one I really enjoyed, so Yeah, big tick in this box for me.
When it comes to this machine, there is a lot of hype surrounding that tilt mechanism. But I wanted to make this test as relevant to normal users as I possibly could. So when I was printing my models, I used 3 popularly available resins. I used 3 widely available resins.
The standard beige Elegoo resin that they sent me with the printer, Sunlu's ABS-like resin, which is grey, and another grey resin, which is Fohammer's Wargamer resin. To test these, I first calibrated each resin, then printed out 3 sets of standardised models. The Utahraptor I've used in all my 3D printing tests so far, so I can compare back, and then some 32 and 75mm minis, just so I can test detail and scale and all that sort of stuff. All the models are available for download for anyone who supports my Patreon, which costs just £3 a month. Let's see what the results were like. I think the Utahraptors are a really good test for 3D printer because they've got lots of fine details as well as fur tech. It was really interesting comparing the Haygears printer because that looks really close, but that machine cost $1,500.
So with the prints out of the way, I wanted to discuss some more practical tests of the usability of this machine. And I'm going to start with the exposure testing. This feature is brilliant and quite frankly it should be available on every machine, and I don't really understand why it isn't.
However, the print screen on the Mars is quite small, so I wasn't able to use my standard test that I use, which is the one from Frozen. So instead I used a smaller version, which is from Amera Labs. Simply upload the file to your machine, select how many versions and how many different exposures you want, from 4 to 8, I chose 4, and then simply plug in the various exposures that you want to test. A slight word of caution when using these settings though, I tested everything from 3 seconds down to 1 second exposure, and while there was a difference between 3 and 1 second, it wasn't as big a swing as I was expecting. But I was able to choose exposure settings that worked for each resin, and I was happy with the results of the models at the end.
The next thing I want to talk about, and the thing that probably affects you most, is how easy this machine is to clean.
It was really refreshing to use a vat that was just simple, with no little add-ons for top-ups or reservoirs or heaters or anything like that. It was just a nice, simple, smooth surface which was easy to wipe down at the end. Great job. I wish I could say the same about the build plate though, because as I mentioned earlier in the video, it's filled with all these weird little columns, which means resin collects all over the place and is actually quite difficult to clean.
Honestly, this vat feels like the one on the GK2.
Except the GK2 has a plastic outer, which means you don't have to clean the inside of the vat as well.
It's a much better design and one I'd like to see on future models.
That said, it's a bit of a first world problem and you can clean it eventually, so hey, at the end of the day, it's a sacrifice you're going to have to make if you're going to buy this printer. And the last point, and probably the most serious point I have about cleanup on this machine, is the bib, or the drip catcher, or whatever you want to call it. This thing, and there's no doubt it works, clips around the vat preventing spills going inside the machine. As you can see from the warning label, if you do get resin inside this machine, there's pretty serious consequences. This just feels like a really imperfect solution. Now to date, I'm not aware of anyone having any issues with resin getting inside their machine. In fact, Fohammer on his test of the Saturn IV does get resin inside his machine and is able to clean it up effectively. In my mind, what Elegoo should have done here is include a little rubber flange which just prevents any resin getting inside that machine while allowing the tilt mechanism to move. The fact they didn't do that, and they've started including a warning label, suggests that they know there's an issue and they should probably get on with fixing it.
And this is probably my biggest word of caution. The tilt vat mechanism's still pretty new technology at this level of printer, and if you want my advice, I'd probably wait 6 months and see how it all pans out and see what problems arise before you invest in it. Just saying, please don't slaughter me in the comments.
There are a few bits missing. First is an extractor system, and there's a handy little cutout on the back so you can add that, likely for the Elegoo Mate. And the second is the heater. And despite the fact I live in the UK, which can be a cold country in winter, I actually don't mind this too much because at the end of the day, Elegoo sell all over the world, and so I fully get the decision to include it as an optional extra. You can pick up a heater that will work for about 70 quid.
But yeah, it would be nice to see this as a standard feature.
So now I want to talk about that tilting vat. The way this works is absolutely identical to the Saturn IV Ultra, in that in order to reduce the failed prints that come from excessive suction forces as the build plate lifts, the whole vat tilts forward so it peels the thing slowly off the FEP rather than just ripping it off. It's a really effective system. You get less fails and it's faster.
There's definitely an argument about whether she'd even care about being able to print models faster, and that's something I want to make another video about, so if you care about that topic, then maybe subscribe. But it should be said that if you can print great models faster, that's something I'm all here for.
The longest prints I had were those Utahraptor models, and they took 2 hours and 18 minutes to print. The same model on my Haygears printer took 2 hours and 45 minutes. So over half an hour quicker.
So if you're a very prolific printer, that half an hour saving will really stack up into something tangible. But if you're only using your printer infrequently, then I would question the value of saving that half an hour. But it is still appreciated, so thanks, Elegoo.
There's no doubt though this printer has a really low failure rate. In the 32 models I've printed for this video, I've only had one failure. I'm not sure exactly why that was, but it does prove the point that despite the tilt vat, this machine is not infallible.
So the conclusion of this video is the Mars 5 Ultra is a smaller version of its big brother, the Saturn 4 Ultra. It's fast, it's reliable, and it prints great quality minis with a variety of resins. So just as I was wrapping up this video, Elegoo reached out to me and let me know the price of this printer was actually going to come in at $269. Elegoo are going hard on these pricing points, so I've got very little choice other than to say run out and buy this printer before they change their mind. In fact, I think the only reason you wouldn't want to buy one of these printers is if the build plate wasn't big enough, and so you should possibly buy the bigger brother. Although I haven't tested that one, but if you want to see an amazing review of that, go and check out Fohammer's review, which really is the best review on the internet. But as ever, it just comes down to your individual budgets. This machine is packing a huge amount of technology for what is essentially an entry-level printer, and it's great to see genuine innovation coming in at this level. In fact, I can probably see this printer cannibalizing sales from its bigger brother, which is great. Obviously, there's some glaring omissions like the heater, which I'd like to see included as standard, but honestly, I can see why they did it, and for me it's not a deal breaker. These days it seems that most 3D printers can make decent minis, so really it comes down to usability and lifestyle printing. And for me, the silly little ergonomic choices like the lack of a tilting lid and that build plate, they create some friction which spoil the overall end result. But frankly, I'm a bit spoilt testing higher end printers, so it's hard to be objective here. What do you think? So while I went into this video wanting to be hypercritical, it's hard to be anything other than completely blown away by this printer. Next up on the channel is a review of the Anycubic M7 Pro, and then I'm going to do a side-by-side test between this printer, the Anycubic, the Haygears, and maybe the GK2 for that matter. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure you're subscribed. If you want to chat in more detail about this printer, there's loads of ways to do it, which I've linked down below. And I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who supports me, particularly those who support me on Patreon, but also those who chat on my Discord. You're all heroes and you know who you are. And I've not said this for a while, but remember, humans need fantasy to be the place where the falling angel meets the rising ape. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.